Hello again, Ian Stuckey with Mastermind Games, back with more Malifaux. This time, the Shieldbearers, part of Raven's box set. Tanned Skin 09044. Again, there are 3 sculpts here, so I'll be doing bits and pieces of each. But the Shieldbearers are denizens of the slums that have fallen under Raven's sway. And to be fair, she has turned them into a fairly effective community. Using scavenged equipment and their zealous faith, coupled with Vincent St. Clair's tactical acumen, they have become a fighting force that is surprisingly effective, according to their little bit of fiction. Their biggest ability, though, is when they die, they come back as an undead almost immediately. This was a distinct in-game effect in 2nd edition Malifaux. We'll see if there is a parallel in 3rd edition Malifaux once I actually get stuff for it. But seeing their fallen members rise from the dead to continue their mission, service, whatever, seems to actually bolster the faith of the survivors. And then Fair Skin 09047. There are 3 sculpts here. We're doing bits and pieces of each on camera, but not all of them, just for the sake of saving time. Let's see. Okay, she's wearing gloves, but her outfit is sleeveless. And with a bicep like that, she's definitely done manual labor, which likely many of the cultists following Reva have had in their lives, since they are in the slums, which is one of the harshest lives imaginable in Malifaux. I'm getting her right arm's going to be tricky because of the angle of the shield. Yeah, at first I thought she just had big puffy sleeves on, but no, those are biceps. We're just looking at a woman built like an NFL linebacker. Because I think I'm using the term right. I don't really watch football. Alright. Get the skin tone on the last one. Move on in a minute. Next up, Templar Blue 09056. Again, going for denim pants. But for some reason, the sculpts here remind me of World War II era bomber crews. Not quite sure why, but let's see here. Okay. Alright. Apply that to the rest and move on in a bit. Alright. Next up, Plate Mail Metal. This is an army painter color and a replacement for the Tarnished steel I've been using for a while that has finally run out. Shaking it up a little extra because it is a brand new pot. And that lid is really on there. Alright. At least I guessed right. Sometimes when you're finding a substitute for a color in another brand than what you've been using, it's a little, what's what I'm looking for? A bit of a guessing game. The shade may not be exactly how it was, but it's also very thick. So it looks like the consistency of paints, even within this brand, might be a little inconsistent. And I'm not going to worry about the trim to the shield because I'll be picking that out in another color later. But I do want to get the bulk of it. Being careful not to make bubbles. And it states in the Shieldbearers entry that much of their equipment was left behind by the guild. Abandoned, essentially. Likely with their owners, because that's just how the guild rolls. That seems odd, since most organizations do a never leave a man behind thing, especially in military organizations. The guild is A, brutal to the point of being a caricature of brutality, but B, I'll get to in just a second when I get the next color. And I can just go ahead and do it now, so let's see here. Do some hair if I can find what I'm looking for. Woodstain Brown 09160. B, caricature of brutality that is the guild aside. The quarantine zones of Malifaux are just barely contained, and the guild, when they first recolonized the city after the breach reopened, had to fight incredibly hard just to claim what little territory they do have. And if you look at the maps of the city, as shown in many of the books, the guild is just barely hanging on to a tiny portion of available space. And Shield Brown 09161. In fact, I'd say they're barely hanging on to a third of the city, with much of it being quarantined. And the previous Governor General, I can't remember his name, but he blew up at the end of, I believe it was Ripples of Fate, and is currently the Burning Man, had the brilliant idea of bulldozing some of the barricades to the slum, to the quarantine zone, intending to use a massive vehicle, Blonde Hair 09257, coupled with a, not so much a wave of troops as a spell he was casting, one that would have turned him into a tyrant entity. But his intent was to use the combination of the tyrant entity spell and the massive super vehicle he was using as a mobile headquarters to purge the quarantine zones, but that went up in smoke when he went up in flames, forcing the guild onto defensive footing, because the things that were contained in the quarantine zone did not hesitate to lash out. And even the 10 Thunders had to show some of their hand and chip in to hold back the unending wave of horrors that this Governor General, had arrogantly assumed would be trampled underfoot so easily. Okay. Though it was because of the 10 Thunders that the Governor General's ritual failed, but probably for the best given what he was planning on doing, which was basically making every living soul in Malifaux his little hypno-slave. Alright, apply the steel to the rest of them, and move on when that's dried up. Next up, Old Bronze 09197. Just for the sake of giving a little extra color to the shield. After all, the iconography on these are interesting enough that it'd be a shame to do the whole thing in one color. Leave it at that. I carefully pick out the trim, or reinforcing, however you want to put it. Patience and control are the keys here. But a lot of the earlier edition fiction has been retconned, usually in small ways, but some things that were never talked about have been expanded on. And some of the last bits of fiction from 2nd edition talked about the guild's retaking of Malifaux once the breach reopened. And it was a very ugly affair, with Perdita Ortega reminiscing with the former Governor General himself about what exactly went down not long before the Governor himself went up. Alright, apply that to the rest and move on a bit. Next up, Leather White 09062. And my paintball was trying to run away. Getting this crude wrapping on the shield functioning as a handle. We'll say these shields, at least 2 out of 3 of them, seem awfully elaborate for something scavenged, but then again, well, most guild guardsmen, and I think the name of that model is actually changing, have to make do with refurbished equipment. It's more likely than not that the guild decided to go in with the best of the best full force during the initial recolonization before scaling things down. Given the absolute terrors that exist in these slums, ranging from undead to neverborn, well, yeah, just the slums, let alone what's in the quarantine zones. I'm getting her shirt as well. It's amazing that anyone can survive, but Reva's little cult, and as well as the Free Corps, have found defensible positions, I guess the best way of putting it. I'll end up talking more about the guild on this video than I have the Resurrectionists, but there are groups who do manage to survive, though I would say barely, in the quarantine zones. But when you want to evade, they're some of the safest places away from the to get away from the guild, as the other dangers are things the guild doesn't want to mess with. All right, just a couple of base coats left. That's a pretty good start. Apply that to the rest and move on. Second to last base coat, oiled leather 09110. Talk a lot about the guild in this video. Well, considering it's a Resurrectionist model, but Malifaux itself is divided into three major parts. Downtown, where the affluent live, at least until their money runs out. The slums are the remaining portion of what the guild controls and what is settled, at least with a mild degree of safety. Even downtown can only be said to be moderately safe. But the quarantine zones are off limits, full of roving undead, neverborn, and who knows what else. It's been left deliberately ambiguous exactly what is in them, but the vast majority of the city is quarantine zones, at least half, probably closer to 2/3. And until the previous Governor General got his brilliant idea to bulldoze part of the walls, were cordoned off by exactly that, thick, sturdy walls, manned constantly. But the political situation in Malifaux means a lot of people are stuck in just about the worst conditions imaginable, where even basic necessities of food and shelter are suddenly luxuries. It's this population that has been drawn to Rave's cult. But to be fair, she at least gives her followers respect, and shows even the undead under her control an amount of human decency that would be unthinkable by anyone else. Even though the Resurrectionists view the undead they create and command as little more than pawns. So, one more base coat, and I can start shading. Last base coat, uniform gray. This is an army painter color. And this basing is just custom sculpted again. It's just a thing I do. Right. A little more right there. Okay. Apply to the rest, let it dry, and then I can start shading. Time to shade. Matte black. This is in Warpaints color. So, thinning the paint into a wash, generally 1 part water to 1 part paint. But in the case of particularly dark colors like this one, you'll need 2 to 3 parts water per 1 part paint. And painting over the base coat. Clean out my brush and Woodstain Brown 09160. I could easily have given them all the same hair color, but decided to give them a little more individuality. Blonde Shadow 09256. Maybe a little more on the tip here. And then Ruddy Leather 09109. Carefully tracing over her suspenders because I do not want to hit the shirt underneath them. I wound up nicking the flesh, but you know what, that's okay. Because these people are stuck in the slums and will likely be unwashed and unkempt for the most part. So it's okay if they end up looking a little dirty. In fact, putting a wash of gray over them once I finish these first shades might not be a bad idea to give the impression that these people are unwashed, unkempt slum dwellers formed together into a impromptu but zealous army. Apply that color to the other two. Move on when it's dry. Next, Linen White 09061. And I just messed that up. So trying to soak up the excess. I should be okay by the time I'm done. I just got a little out of hand, which happens, so mistakes happen. It's just a matter of fixing them. That gets the white shaded. I need to let that dry before I move on. Next up, Breonne Blue 09055. And I am at a stage where I can only do one color at a time, so... Fortunately, it's hot and dry enough today. I don't have to worry about lengthy... What? I am getting horribly tongue-tied. It's hot and dry enough today that drying times are pretty quick even on this, which is the longest drying time you're going to have just because of the extra water in the paint. But temperature and humidity will affect it, so more humidity and colder temperatures will generally get you a longer drying time, while heat and drier or lower humidity, drier climates will get a quicker dry time, but it's still going to take a while. Okay, next up, Ancient Bronze 09196. Program's doing some funny stuff, so I need to be very mindful of it. I see I'm still having that intermittent focus issue. Oh, the doors of technical difficulties, right? Oh, well, thin it out, put it on. Then I wound up redoing the back of his shield in the bronze once I got to it. But question might be why the guild would, when they have firearms, would even use shields and melee weapons. After all, their guild guards, or I think the model's name's changed, a patrol or something like that, has a sword and a gun. The thing is, technologically, firearms are limited to revolvers pretty much for rapid fire capacity. The machine guns are starting to show up. It's a matter of when you've got a huge horde of shrieking monsters charging you, you may not have time to reload and need something else to fall back on. Apply that to the rest and move on as soon as I can. Alright. Blackened Steel. Excuse me. Blackened Steel 09205. Gotta love the hiccups. And I nicked the skin there. Or shirt, sorry. Just a quick run across the blade. That's a bit too much. Thin that out a bit more. And get the top here, or the face of the shield. Alright, apply that to the other two and move on and try. Okay. Tanned Shadow 09043. So I managed to get some white onto this guy's chest. This should thin it out, but I think I am going to do an additional layer of shading over the whole model before I do the base to make them look dirtier and grimier. Again, these people are slum dwellers, if they're lucky. Quarantine zone dwellers if they're not. So getting a nice solid coat over his skin. Then Fair Shadow 09046. Now, I would think a sword this large would be difficult to use one-handed, but Shieldbearers' zealousness likely gives them the strength to do so. Possibly magical power as well, but they're also arguably pseudo-undead, since, while alive, they do rise from the grave after they are slain, like immediately, being described in Rava's vignette as spectral in appearance. Gonna absorb that little bit near her elbow, apply to the last one, and then do the big one. Second to last shade, Rainy Gray 09038. Oh, the sound these things make when they're running low. So I'm thinning this out a little more than usual. Just going to go over the entire model with it to give it a dirty appearance before I highlight. In fact, I could be using a larger brush for this if I'd thought it out a little more. No, this will be fine. Just doing this quickly. If it's uneven, that's fine too. It'll help, because not everything is going to get dirty in an even, orderly manner. So. Not too bad, so do that to the other two. Then after try to do the last shade. Okay. Well, that seemed to dull, last shade seemed to dull things up just the way I wanted it to. So Stormy Gray to finish up, 09088. And apply that to the rest, and once it's all dry, I can highlight in detail. Okay, details now. So, getting a little dazed here. Matte white. Carefully filling in the eyes. So that shade of gray I put over everything really did fill things out nicely. Dull things out nicely is the word I was looking for. I'm very tired. Alright. I'm going to have to let that dry because I got too much water in it. Back in a bit. Okay. Matte black. carefully dotting in pupils. That looks a little funny. It looks kind of sad like that. And my brushes are getting a little beat up. Okay, let that dry, then I can highlight and wrap up. Okay, time to dry brush highlighting it, so tanned highlight 09045. So for dry brushing, no water, straight paint only. Don't need too terribly much of this. A ragged feathered brush, like that. And rubbing the excess out on a paper towel until it looks like there's nothing left. Dusting the area to be affected, you want to go from the low areas to the high. Refreshing the paint as necessary. You do want your brush completely dry. And that is way excessive right there. And then fair highlights 09048. Get a little more than that. Just gonna switch over to a new brush. Since I've got several that are suitable for this, I'm waiting on the other to dry. Yeah, looking at that bicep there, this is a woman that could probably bench press me. Alright. Apply to the lower one and move on. Okay. Ashen blue 09057. This will be going on the denim, but trying to play around with my camera settings. Try to fix that blurriness issue I'm still having, but I'll figure something out. Maybe I need to change the lighting and give that a shot. I'll just have to keep trying different things until I get something that works. Where's that? Okay, there we go. Had to do a bit of digging to find an appropriate brush. Though this one might be a bit soft. Like, you don't want your brushes too soft or too stiff for this step. It's kind of a balancing act, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. Apply to the other two. Move on in a sec. Okay. Next, I can find a true silver 09207. The color scheme here is fairly elaborate. So, despite the bulk of it being fairly drab. Going against rough edges to shine the blade up a little bit and apply to the others and move on. Okay, gonna try 3 in a row here. Blonde highlight 09258. I got a bit of the silver in her hair, but I think the gray knocked it out. But One of these days I'm going to get this focus thing figured out. Until then, I just have to keep trying different things till something works. Going against sharp edges. And then Shield Brown 09161. Alright. It's fighting me. For some reason, this sculpture reminds me of Vasquez from Aliens. Okay. Driftwood Brown 09162. And then Tarnished Brass 09198. At least this one isn't dropping thousands of frames a second, but the blurriness is still... It's something I need to work on, something I need to figure out how to fix. I've been painting miniatures for over 20 years, but I've only been doing YouTube videos for about 2, give or take. And he just took a tumble. I've got no grip today. And you'll see this is really shining up the iconography on the shield. Alright. Hit the other 2, let that dry, move on. Next, Ghost White 09063. Going against the edges here to really pop them. Okay. One more back here. Apply that to the other 2 and move on. Second to last. What is it? Burnt Orange 09111. Going back to one of the brushes I used first now that it's dried out. And I think it's this jacket alone that brings to mind the image of the World War II combat pilot. Could bit on the grip there. Apply to the other two. Then I can move on and wrap up. Last highlight, Misty Gray 09090. A bit thick there. I'll apply to the rest, and there's just 2 steps left. Final step, matte white, and I'm just going to number these so that in a game I just have to put the same number on the reference card and can quickly tell who is who. Helps clear things up a lot and prevents a lot of complaining. So Roman numerals, which are easy to paint, just 1, 2, 3. Always clean your brushes after use. Immediately is best. Now what's left is to spray them with a varnish of some type. I prefer a matte, but whatever you feel like. And there are Rave's Shieldbearers. I'm going to be taking a little breather and do some models I'm not going to be doing videos for a little bit, and then when I come back, not quite sure when, I'll be hitting up another Malifaux box, but shouldn't be more than a week. But until then, I am Ian Stookie with Mastermind Games, signing out.